Premanande. Hari Hari. Shampoo.
Do it on this side. Okay, kids.
It's okay.
Guess what? It's a double header. Some of you were not with us yesterday or the day before. How many were with us yesterday? Okay. Well, the second half of the double header is we're going to be discussing Krishna in Vrindavan, and specifically part 3 of Krishna and the Aghasura demon. But today's a very special day in addition, besides Krishna in Vrindavan, which is very special. Major garland. Whew. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Today is the disappearance day of Baladev Vidyabhusan. So we're going to spend some time discussing a little bit about his significance, his life, his gift. Maybe some of you have noticed, I'm just going to, let me offer our pranam mantras to Prabhupada and we'll continue. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatadine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Next time you are reading Bhagavad Gita, take note the dedication page. Srila Prabhupada dedicates Bhagavad Gita as it is to Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana. And we'll hear a little bit about why. A great acharya in our line of disciplic succession. He's particularly known for his writing the bhasya or commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And we'll hear a little bit of the history of how that happened. He didn't raise his hand and volunteer, let me be the commentator for Vedanta Sutra, but it happened. And it would happen in a very spectacular way. So that's what he's perhaps most known for. His commentary on Bhagavad Gita also, Gita Bhushana. And this is how it's written in the dedication page. Dedication to Srila Baladev Vidyabhusan, who presented so nicely Gita Bhushana commentary on Vedanta philosophy. It was the commentary on Bhagavad Gita, but dedicated to him, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And he wrote an elaborate commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, like verse by verse, the entire Bhagavatam. And he gave it the name Vaishnava Nandini Tika. He was, in his early years as a Vaishnava, involved in Udupi, and because he was involved in Udupi, he became quite familiar with the teachings of Madhvacharya, and one of Madhvacharya's principal writings, the Prameya Ratnavali, is what he wrote, Baladev wrote, and based upon the Nava Prameyas, 9 essential teachings. This is a cornerstone of Madhvacharya's writings. Nava Prameyas, 9 essential teachings. And based upon those 9 essential teachings, in our line, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he established one additional one, he called it 10, Dasa Mula Tattva. That is, from in the line of Madhvacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his initiation, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was highly educated and prolific writer. He wrote 100 books. And maybe 90 of those 100 books at least mentions these 10 essential teachings, or Dasamula Tattva, resting upon the Nava Prameyas. They're very, not identical, very similar, plus a 10th one. He wrote commentary on Ishopanishad, and he liked writing commentaries. So Tattva Sandarbha is the first of the 6 Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami, commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you see a series of other books. All of these are commentaries, all of these. Additional commentaries, here's a list. Gopal Tapani Upanishad, very important. Laghu Bhagavatamrita, commentary. Laghu Bhagavatamrita is a book by Rupa Goswami, focusing on one topic, the avatars of Vishnu. Laghu Bhagavatamrita. So he wrote a commentary on Laghu Bhagavatamrita. And Vishnu Sahasranam, many of you have heard certainly that title, the 1,000 names of Vishnu. So he wrote a commentary on that. Namartha Shuddhabhasya. He had a liking, very specific liking or dedication to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. Naturally so. So in every one of his books, he offers his respects to Rupa and Sanatana. In those, the dedication page or section, veritable clouds dispelling the dust storms of Mayavadi doctrine. And as you can put 2 and 2 together, you come up with 4, right? Prabhupada gave us his second prana mantra, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. You know the mantra, we just recited it. It's following Baladev Vidyabhusan. And Baladev Vidyabhusan was initially connected with Madhvacharya, who strongly defeated Mayavad philosophy. I'll say it again. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted Diksha from a sannyasi who is in the line of Madhvacharya, and Madhvacharya's principal contribution was Dvaitavad, specifically head-on collision, confrontation with Shankaracharya's teaching, rather than saying it's all one, it's all two. and again and again and again and again and again and again. So as Madhvacharya did, Baladev recognized that Rupa and Sanatan did, and Srila Prabhupada did, following Madhvacharya, and following Rupa and Sanatan, and following Baladev. See, here's a very well-known painting illustrating, there's Baladev Vidyabhusan, and he's looking very absorbed in meditation upon Krishna in his deity form. Prabhupada accepted sannyas from Keshava Goswami, Bhakti Pragya Keshava Goswami. He was a sannyasi, disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta, that lived in Mathura. When Prabhupada was in the Vanaprastha stage, living in Vrindavan, Bhakti Pragya Keshava Maharaj insisted that Srila Prabhupada fulfill Bhakti Siddhanta's instruction to preach via the sannyas ashram. So here's Keshava, Bhakti Pragya Keshava Goswami's words honoring Baladev. Sri Madhva Sampradaya Sri Chaitanya Kula Rakshaka. All glories to Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan, who is the opulence, or the Bhushana, opulence of the Sri Madhva Sampradaya, the decoration of Sri Chaitanya Dev's dynasty, the protector of the Sri Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and a great-minded, lion-like Acharya. So he, like Srila Prabhupada, had great respect for Baladev. And we're going to hear some reasons why. He was born in Orissa, in the Balasore district of Orissa, near Ramona. Ramona is a celebrated place in Orissa because of the Gopinath deity, Shirakura Gopinath deity in Ramona. Many of you know the pastime. So very near to Ramona is where Baladev Vidyabhusan was born in the 18th century. There, as a young boy, he studied Sanskrit grammar, Sanskrit poetry, literature, and logic on a particular location in the southern part of Orissa. And after he completed his youthful studies, he went on tour, on pilgrimage to holy places. He went for some time to Mysore, and in Mysore he studied the Vedas at a Tattvavadi monastery. Tattvavadi monastery means a place where the followers of Madhvacharya resided. So some of the followers of Madhvacharya resided in Mysore, and they had an ashram. They trained young boys that would come to take shelter in their ashram. He studied there. And by studying under the Tattvavadis, or the followers of Madhvacharya, he accepted at a later stage of his life, he accepted sannyas initiation. But before he became a sannyasi, some other things happened. Some of these other things that happened, after taking sannyas, he moved to Puri. And when he moved to Puri, he settled in the Madhvacharya again, and engaged in debate on scripture with scholars of other schools of thought. So this was during his time and prior to his time. It was like a way to scholars, learned persons would do this type of thing. You know, people in the mode of passion, they have sports. And people in the mode of goodness, they have debate. Little Prabhupada story. one time, Prabhupada's personal secretary, his name is Guru Das, they were in West Bengal somewhere near Calcutta, and they were passing a schoolyard. They saw some boys out in the schoolyard playing soccer. So out of friendship and curiosity, Guru Das asked Prabhupada, when you were a young boy, did you play sports? And Prabhupada said, when I was a young boy, I was the captain of the debate team. That was sport. So Brahmanas had sport too. They would engage in debate. And he would debate. He, Baladev, debated scripture with schools of other thought. After studying, now, so while he's in Puri, he had the very good fortune of meeting someone in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So prior, he was introduced to Madhvacharya's line and became quite familiar with Madhvacharya's teachings. Then he met this nice devotee, Radha Damodar. We're going to see the family tree or the ancestry of Radha Damodar. Radha Damodar was a disciple of Nayananda, and Nayananda was the grandson of Rasikananda. Rasikananda was a disciple of Shamananda. And so these are persons in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This particular devotee that he met, Radha Damodar Goswami, was very learned, as was his preceptors in line, with the teachings, specifically the teachings of Jiva Goswami, particularly the Sandarbhas. He was very impressed and became very learned. So here's the line. I mentioned, you see number 3, Shamananda. Shamananda was trained in Vrindavan under Jiva Goswami. He was one of the 3 principal persons. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa Sanat, are just a quick line in Bhagavad Gita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa and Sanatan, Jiva Goswami, and then these 3. Shamananda was one of those 3. Shamananda had a very elevated disciple named Rasikananda. If you go to Jagannath, you go to Ramuna sometime, in the courtyard of Ramuna is his samadhi, Rasikananda. He liked Gopinath. And he stayed there for some time. And his samadhi is there. And he had a disciple, Nayananda, and he had a disciple, Radha Damodar, and Baladev became enamored with the teachings of Jiva Goswami, learned in this manner just described. And after learning the Sandarbhas, he moved to Vrindavan. And there in Vrindavan, he studied under Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami are commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he studied Srimad Bhagavatam and many other things from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And we'll see shortly, he established a deity of Shama Sundara in Vrindavan. He had 2 prominent disciples, their names are mentioned. And so he's very, very intimately associated with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, vastly learned, vastly respected senior Vaishnava in Vrindavan. And then came a problem. The problem came because in the following sequence of events. There was once upon a time, Rupa Goswami had a deity in Vrindavan named Govindaji. And Raj Mohan Singh, who is from Jaipur, he helped build the temple for Govindaji. There's history and history, which I'm not going into because of time, because I want to go to the next topic. But Raj Mohan Singh was a king in Jaipur. And he visited Vrindavan, and when he visited Vrindavan, because he's a Krishna Bhakta, when he visited Vrindavan, he was so impressed with Rupa Goswami. He wanted to do something. I'm a king. Let me do some service. I don't need anything. But you can build a temple for Govindaji. So he built a spectacular temple for Govindaji. And some time passed. And another king, a Muslim king, named Aurangzeb, he particularly disliked Vaishnavism. And he particularly liked favoring Muslim. So one time he was riding in his royal chariot, and he saw in the top in the sky at night this bright light, and he understood what that was. There was a chakra on top of, because he had a lamp in the top of the temple, and so he ordered his soldiers to go break the temple. So they went to break the temple, and they started the upper. So there was a 7-story building. I mean, 7-story building in those days, it's like, there's no such thing. It's all stone, red sandstone. It wasn't the way they do it. Anyway, so, and he knocked it for the top 4 stories over. And to protect the deity, because these soldiers were out of control, the deity was taken into hiding. In fact, not only Govindaji, but the other principal deities of Vrindavan, because Aurangzeb was a wild man, and very powerful and capable of doing anything without a blink. So a descendant of Raj Mohan Singh was Jai Singh. So he's the incumbent king in Jaipur, very humbly named after him, Jaipur. There's a whole long story of all the deities were secretly at night and hidden in bullock carts and this and that, taking different steps, eventually ended up in Jaipur. And for the safety of the deity was kept inside the courtyard of the king's palace. So Govindaji was being worshipped in that way, inside the palace. But going back some period of time, there was a problem. And the problem was, not so far from Jaipur, there's a city named Amber. And Amber is in the Galta district. And settled in that area were some Sri Vaishnavas known as Ramanadis. Now, it's a little complicated, but it's not too terribly complicated. Ramanadis, at a certain point in time, Sri Vaishnavism split into 2. There was one group and another group, and they disagreed on certain types of details of worship. The issue was over surrender. And because there's a key verse in Ramayana, many of you know, Ram says to Vibhishan, even if someone even once surrenders to me with sincerity, forevermore I'll protect them. So there was a group that had the view, based upon that statement in Ramayana by Lord Ramachandra, it says surrender is it. You just surrender, you're home free. And then the other school said, yes, surrender, but then it's an ongoing process of surrender. And they had some debate over, is it this or that? So they split. And one of those groups went in a northerly direction from Srirangam all the way up to Rajasthan. And they settled because the king of Rajasthan, going back many generations, he gave financial support to build a temple and establish a headquarters for the Ramanadis. So they had the king's support. But there was a problem. The problem is this new king, Jai Singh, he doesn't like Ramachandra as much as he likes Govinda. Competition. And then the competition got heated to the point where they were challenging the Gaudiya Vaishnavas who were worshipping Govindaji with Radharani by Govindaji's side, saying there's no such thing. So the Ramanadis, demanded that the king remove Radharani and remove the worship by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas from the worship of Gopinath or Govindaji. And they're like powerful brahmanas, and he's a king, and he's looking up to the powerful brahmanas that had an axe to grind. And so he moved the deities. And when the king removed the deity of Radharani, Govindaji is still in the courtyard of the palace. But because followers of Ramanujacharya, they can also worship Govinda and Ramachandra and Vishnu, but not with Radha by the side of Govinda. So here's their three main objections that they raised, and they had to be answered. Gaudiya followers were giving preferential treatment to Govinda over Vishnu. This was a big axe for them to grind. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas have no commentary on Vedanta Sutra, and thus they're not qualified to worship the deity. Because without commentary on Vedanta Sutra, how can you be worshipper of the deity? How can you be a qualified brahmana? So it should be turned over to them. The worship of Govinda should be turned over to them. Because Govinda, is secondary to Vishnu. That's their view. And they had an objection to Radharani being by the side of Govindaji because there's no such reference in the scripture that they knew of, and so they wanted Radharani to be removed. So the poor king, hearing all of this complaint, the king, he was initiated within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, but he yielded to these Sri Vaishnava followers, the Ramanadis, and sent a message to Vrindavan, help. And who did he want help from? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the most learned personality anywhere. But by this time, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was very old. And he decided, I'm too old, I'll die if I try to make this journey to Jaipur. So he gave instructions, comprehensive instructions to Baladev how to answer each of these challenges. So Baladev, feeling charged by his Shiksha Guru, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he made his journey to Jaipur. And when he went to Jaipur, there was a face-to-face confrontation with Ramanadis. They lodged their complaints, this, and this. And we want to see your commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And he gave, of course, the answer. There's no commentary on Vedanta Sutra by the followers of Lord Chaitanya because you can stand wherever you like, but you can see the screen better from here, as you wish, as you wish. Hare Krishna. So we're back, we're in Jaipur. Baladev Vidyabhusan is in Jaipur, and he's meeting with the Ramanadis, And this challenge, that challenge, the other challenge. And we don't have a, yes, it's true we don't have a commentary in Vedanta Sutra because we understand that the author of Vedanta Sutra wrote his own commentary. So we can't supersede the author and his commentary. That would be audacious. It would be an offense. We want to see your commentary. So they somehow struck a deal. Baladev agreed because he knew their issues, philosophical issues, and he knew the Gaudiya teachings comprehensively, particularly from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, so he agreed to write a commentary. And they gave him 18 days. How can you write a commentary on Vedanta Sutra in 18 days? It's like impossible. So in that evening, Baladev had a dream. And in the dream, Govindaji himself appeared in his dream. And he instructed him, you write the commentary, I'll dictate and you write. And it'll be so strong, no one will be able to refute it. Here's a little illustration. He's offering his prayers to Govindaji. So he completed commentary in 18 days. Mission impossible. 18 days. 18 days. Whew. But he's qualified and he did it. So he writes at the beginning of his Govinda Bhashya, may he, who so mercifully and munificently was kind toward me and bestowed his favor by ordering me in a dream to write down his own commentary, which he would compose, and which attained such renown among the learned circles that they bestowed upon me the title Vidya Bhushana, the ornament of knowledge, Vidya Bhushana. May that dear capital F friend of Srimati Radharani, who holds him dearer than her own life, be glorified. May that Sri Govinda be glorified. That's the beginning passage. And so he sat under a tree and he compiled Govinda Bhashya with the understanding that Govinda was dictating, he was writing. You know, it's like Ganesh writing what Vyasadeva is indicating. And there are specific points that were made in his commentary, and after he completed his commentary, he went to pay a visit to the Ramanadis. And the Ramanadis were ready to receive him, and they had a debate, because that was the sport of the time. And the opponents, the Ramanadis, brought their this, that, and the other complaint, and here's what he said. You objected to our worship of Radha with Govinda on superficial grounds, that they are not married. So how can Radha be by the side of Krishna? They're not married. I presented the true position of Radha in relation to Krishna. Radha is the eternal energy of Krishna and is never separated from him. The relationships may be parakiya or swakiya, but that does not affect the eternality of their relation. The separation of Radha and Govinda you have affected is artificial and therefore offensive to the Lord, who holds deep affection for his female energy. So he indicates, you'll see shortly, he indicates which sections of his Govinda Bhashya address this issue, Radha by the side of Krishna, or by the side of Govinda or Gopinath. One of the key references he makes is from the Tantras, Brihat Gautamiya Tantra. There's the Sanskrit. And the translation of the Sanskrit, Radha is the supreme deity, full of Krishna, full of all Lakshmis, full of all beauty, and the most attractive. Now this is a scriptural reference refuting their position that Radha isn't mentioned anywhere in the scripture. So how can they worship Radha? In fact, Radha is the most perfect Lakshmi. Now he made reference, it's indirect. Many of you know this particular verse. This is from Gopi Gita. This is chapter 30, canto 10, chapter 30. This is the performance of the rasa dance. It comes before Gopi Gita. And the gopis, the first verse of chapter 30, the gopis are Krishna detects some pride, transcendental pride, and he disappears. And when he disappears, that's the first verse, they go mad. And they start singing in a certain meter, very special meter, that sing the songs of Govinda. And then after they complete their song, Krishna appears. And when Krishna appears, he takes one of the gopis, that's this particular verse. Certainly, this particular gopi has perfectly worshipped the all-powerful personality of Godhead Govinda, since he was so pleased with her that he abandoned the rest of us and brought her to a secluded place. Now, the verse, the whole of the Bhagavatam doesn't mention Radha's name. The reason given is Shukadeva Goswami, just saying her name, he would lose it. He would go into an ecstasy of trance, and he couldn't complete the Bhagavatam. So he didn't mention her by name, but he refers to her as Anya Radhito Nunam, this particular gopi, who Anya Radhito worshipped the person, she worshipped the all-powerful personality of Godhead Govinda so nicely that Krishna took her away. See, he mentioned this in his commentary. So, at the end of the debate, the followers were stunned. The Ramanadis were stunned. They had no refutation. So Jai Singh was present, and he announced victory. Jai. Victory to Baladev. He has defeated them. And right there in their headquarters, he established a deity, a Vijay Gopal. Not just Radha, Vijay Gopal. There's the deity in Jaipur. And this is in Vrindavan town. The tall deities on the right, those are his deities. The small deity, Radha Vinod deity, is Lokanath Goswami's deity. And the tall deity is Baladev Vijayabhusan's deity. And the really small, see the really small Krishna with his flute down there in the bottom, that's the deity of Gokulananda, deity of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. There's history behind each of these deities. Over on our left, or the deity's right, there's a deity that was worshipped by Narottam Das Thakur. So it's a very busy altar with deities, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur stayed for quite some time in Vrindavan town. Later he stayed in Radhakund. That's where Baladev and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur principally associated, but they also associated in the Vrindavan town. And this is the altar, very celebrated place in Vrindavan town. And we're honoring the disappearance day on this particular lunar calendar day in the year 1768, by Western calendar anyway. So that's a little history on Baladev Vidyabhusan. And now we're ready for part two. For those of you that came in a little bit later, you missed some parts of part one, but you didn't miss any part of part two. Part two is a continuation of what the last two evenings. There's been some discussion about Krishna in Vrindavan, and specifically Krishna's pastime in Vrindavan of dealing with the demon Aghasura, Aghasura. And killing of the demon Aghasura. So for those of you that were not with us for parts 1 and 2, just a little background. The age of Krishna in Vrindavan at this time, our acharyas explain, 4 years, 4 months. Very small. But very powerful, because he was very powerful even when he was 3 months old and killed Putana. And Putana was the younger sister of Aghasura, who was from this, you see this is chapter 12. Aghasura is dealt with by Krishna in chapter 11. Now this is chapter 12. So Aghasura is the elder brother. He had a younger brother, Baka, and a younger sister, Putana. And Kamsa sent Aghasura to go kill Krishna, because by this time he knew where he was, because Putana found him, and Putana was killed by Krishna. So I'll go back. So we heard a little bit about parts 1 and 2. We heard about what little boys do when they're 4 years, 4 months. They play. And they're in Vrindavan, so they pray as little cowherd boys would play in Vrindavan. And, you know, many things we heard, because there's two full evenings. So I can't review, but the playfulness is important to understand part 3. They're super playful, right? Over the top playful, because they're little boys. And there's 2 other details that are important. One is that Balaram wasn't there. And our acharyas give reason why Balaram wasn't there. One of the acharyas says it was his birthday, so his mother wanted him to stay home. Another explanation was some relative of his came to visit, and so from Rohini side, so he was asked by his mother, Rohini, to stay and deal with your relative. So in any case, Balaram wasn't there, which is important, because when Krishna and the cowherd boys enter into the mouth of Aghasura, a demon, Balaram is all powerful. He could have just knocked the guy and finished the whole thing. So he wasn't there. And there's other reasons why he wasn't there. And another was they hadn't had breakfast yet, because normally they have breakfast before they go out, but this particular morning, by Krishna's plan, they didn't have breakfast yet. They had their the prasadam in little bags, lunch bags they're called. I wanted to share 2 very nice verses, both composed by Sanatana Goswami, in a collection of stavas or prayers found in a book, or compiled in a book, Krishna Lila Stava. That's the title of the book. And he, Sanatana Goswami, from his childhood, there's a nice story, the Sanatana Goswami story. When he was a little boy, he was going to school. He was a Brahmana by birth, so he was going to school. And when he was studying grammar, one evening at night he had a dream. And in his dream, a Brahmana came and gave him a handwritten copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was feeling thrilled. And he woke up and was a little startled at what he saw in his dream. The very next morning, the Brahmin came to his door and handed him the Srimad Bhagavatam. Very same person in his dream. And so from his childhood, as a Brahmana, knowing Sanskrit and loving Krishna already, now he had the Srimad Bhagavatam that teaches all about Krishna. So his life from childhood was dedicated to Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna Bhakti. So therefore it's natural when he's an adult, he's writing Krishna Lila Stava and appreciating Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's two verses. One, oh, Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, giver of saintliness to the unsaintly. Oh, uplifter of the very fallen. Please, do not ever leave me. Please become manifest upon my heart and my throat, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. He's a lover of the Bhagavatam. And here's similar verse, 2 verses prior. Oh, Srimad Bhagavatam, oh my only friend, oh my companion, oh my teacher, oh my great wealth, oh my deliverer, oh my good fortune, oh my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. He is immersed. And by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we can also become immersed, at least a little bit, not as thoroughly as Sanatana Goswami probably in this lifetime, but on the path. So the playfulness is in the section that we just heard. We heard at length yesterday, like for maybe a half an hour, commentary on one verse, where Shukadeva Goswami, describing the playfulness of the cowherd boys, he just stops his conversation and goes into ecstasy and describes how fortunate are these cowherd boys, and compares the cowherd boys to others who have some affinity for Krishna, like the Gyanis that have Brahma Sukha, the happiness of Brahman, but they don't play with Krishna. The demigods who have opulence, they don't play with Krishna. And and the yogis, they don't play with Krishna. The cowherd boys, they're face to face with Krishna playing with him. There's details in that commentary. So that's what we spent time. So now comes the next verse. This is Shukadeva Goswami speaking. My dear King Parikshit, thereafter there appeared a great demon named Aghasura, whose death was being awaited even by the demigods. The demigods drank nectar, amrita, every day. But still they feared this great demon and awaited his death. And commentary says, this demon could not tolerate the transcendental pleasure of being enjoyed in the forest by the cowherd boys. He was envious. So envious, he couldn't tolerate. Their happiness superseded his happiness, so he interrupted Krishna's pastimes. So our acharyas, starting with Vishwanath, asked the question, how is it possible? Can a demon interrupt Krishna's pastimes? And his answer? The Lila Shakti of the Lord, seeing that the bliss of the boys from playing was increasing and increasing at every moment, and it was not possible for them to stop playing. Seeing that without stopping playing, they could not eat, and that the eating time had already passed. Remember, they didn't have breakfast. Also, seeing that it was necessary to kill the demon, Krishna's Leela Shakti brought the Aghasura demon towards the boys, inspiring him through Paramatma. Now this is an old style painting you see up on the hill up there in the top part of the painting. That's the Aghasura demon. And there's the Kauravas down below. They're by the river Jamuna, some distance away. And inspired by Leela Shakti, Paramatma arranged for Aghasura to come right at that particular time. That's Vishwanath's commentary. Jiva Goswami's commentary. The Devatas, though they had drunk nectar, were fearful of death, and thus waited for Aghasura's weak point, thinking, when and how will he die? Another commentary, Sridhar Swami writes, the meaning can be, even though the Devatas were fully absorbed in liberation or Amrita, they waited his death. They wanted to live long in order to see Krishna's pastimes. And he goes on. They were without death because of accepting bodies for pastimes, or their subtle and gross bodies were without destruction. That's the demigods. It is said even the liberated accept forms and participate in the pastimes. The Devatas were expecting these pastimes. So this is, the illustration is meant to show Devatas in the sky. They're looking down on earth, and they're watching Krishna's childhood, because it was discussed in the first two parts. They're zooming around in the sky on their vimanas, their carriers, and observing the joy of the cowherd boys playing with Krishna. They can't participate, but they can see. So that's a very special privilege, but it's more privileged than the demigods as the cowherd boys, because they were the ones playing with Krishna directly. Here's the next verse. Aghasura, who had been sent by Kamsa, was the younger brother of Putana and Bakasura. No, so he wasn't the older brother, he was the younger brother of these two, and the two were already killed. Therefore, when he came and saw Krishna at the head of all the cowherd boys, he thought, aha, this Krishna has killed my sister and brother Putana and Bakasura. Therefore, in order to please both of them, I shall kill this Krishna, along with his assistants, the other cowherd boys. So he's got a bad motive. Murder. This is the next verse. Aghasura thought, if somehow or other I can make Krishna and his associates serve as the last offering of sesame and water for the departed souls of my brother and sister, then the inhabitants of Brajabhumi, for whom these boys are the life and soul, will automatically die. If there is no life, there's no need for the body. Consequently, when their sons are dead, naturally all the inhabitants of Braja will die. That's the verse. That's his meditation. Kill Krishna, the cowherd boys, and thus, in turn, all the residents of Vrindavan. Now, the next text says he was 8 miles long. He had shape-changing abilities. He had a human-like form, but he had mystic powers, as did his brother Baka, and as did his sister Putana. They had mystic powers. So he assumed this humongous 8 miles. Think about how far that is. And our drive from the temple, how many miles?
32 miles.
32. So there's like 4 Aghasuras. He's a big guy. That crooked Aghasura assumed the form of a huge python, as thick as a big mountain and as long as 8 miles. Having assumed this wonderful python's body, he spread his mouth like a big cave in the mountains and lay down on the road, expecting to swallow Krishna and his associates, the cowherd boys. So this is a, what do you call it, artificial intelligence kind of illustration. Because down the far bottom left corner, that's the cowherd boys. They're really tiny compared to this big guy. Resolving thus, at that moment he spread himself out without moving, since he was a cheating killer who could easily swallow them all by tricky means. You know, pythons, they're already, however big they are, they can expand their body. They can swallow a horse. Just make their body, and then they digest the horse, or a cow or a calf or something. Or their pythons' bodies are very expandable. Oops, here we go. He would swallow them all at once, since he was a python. This is Sanatana Goswami. Or he was cruel, with a proclivity for eating such boys. His lower lip rested on the surface of the earth, and his upper lip was touching the clouds in the sky. This guy's big, 8 miles long, and see how big his mouth is. The borders of his mouth resembled the sides of a big cave in a mountain, and the middle of his mouth was as dark as possible. Just waiting for them. Pythons, they wait for their prey. His tongue resembled a broad traffic way. His breath was like a warm wind, and his eyes blazed like fire. Next text. Upon seeing the demon's wonderful form, which resembled a great python, the boys thought it must be a beautiful scenic spot in Vrindavan. Because, you know, playful. Hey, here's a play toy for us, little playground. You know, seeing, like children may see a slide or sandbox or something. It's just a place to play, that's all. So they thought. Thereafter, they imagined it to be similar to the mouth of a great python. In other words, the boys, unafraid, thought that it was a statue made in the shape of a great python for the enjoyment of their pastimes. Some thoughtful person, look at this, they put this nice toy for us right in our path. Some of the boys, on seeing Aghasura, started to run away, thinking it was a big snake. Other boys, this is Vishwanath's commentary, however, considered that Aghasura was one of the wonders of Vrindavan. They weren't worried at all. They comforted their fearful friends by saying, "Oh, fools, a snake can never be this big. It's something created by the Lord out of clay, so that we can appreciate the splendor of Vrindavan even more. He has made it in the form of a huge snake with a big gaping snout." Next text. The boys said, "Dear friends, is this creature dead, or is it actually a living python with its mouth spread wide just to swallow us all? Kindly clear up this doubt." Next verse. Thereafter they decided, "Dear friends, this is certainly an animal sitting here to swallow us all. Its upper lip resembles a cloud, reddened by the sunshine, and its lower lip resembles the reddish shadow of a cloud. Now you see the painting, they're already going into the mouth of Aghasura. On the left and right, the two depressions resembling mountain caves are the corners of its mouth. And the high mountain peaks are its teeth. Its length and breadth, the animal's tongue resembles a broad traffic way, and the inside of its mouth is very, very dark, like a cave in a mountain. So Sanatana Goswami comments, in Vrindavan, because of unlimited cows wandering about, it appeared there was a wide road, naturally everywhere. In other words, paths in the middle of Vrindavan. Wide paths because so many cows and walking in a certain direction, they make a path day after day. Next text. The hot, fiery wind is the breath coming out of its mouth, which is giving off bad smell of burning flesh because of all the dead bodies he has eaten. So they can smell this bad smell. Then the boys said, has this living creature come to swallow us? If he does so, he will immediately be killed like Aghasura without delay. Danger, no problem, Krishna will take care of it. Thus, they looked at the beautiful face of Krishna, the enemy of Aghasura, and laughing loudly and clapping their hands, they entered the mouth of the python. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, together they spoke with a little fear. This thing, if it is really a snake, and we enter his mouth, will he swallow us up? And someone answered to calm them down, if it's so, then in an instant, he will be killed like Baka was killed by Krishna. So it's a very nice painting. You see the demigods up in the sky, watching the whole scene. That's important because Brahma is watching, he's part of the demigods watching the whole scene. And there go the cowherd boys, climbing into the mouth. Vishwanath writes, saying such words, they smiled while looking at Krishna, who was standing some distance away. Krishna is within our glance, so what we have to worry? And they entered the mouth out of boyish curiosity. Boys will be boys, right? So there they go. Now Krishna is standing off in the distance, watching all this, and Jiva Goswami writes, they looked at Krishna's face and laughed loudly to show that what they said was a joke, implying to Krishna, you should be careful here. And Sanatana Goswami writes, Aghasura was a cheating killer. Now, we're getting close to ending this part 3, and I'm really anticipating part 4 because it's really special. But here is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I mentioned before, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote 100 books. It's a lot of books. And 2 of those books describe Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and his killing of demons in Vrindavan, and how his killing of demons indicates Krishna's readiness to remove obstacles in the path of a sadhaka. That's us, practitioners, practicing bhakti. Krishna's ready to remove obstacles. And his destruction of demons in Vrindavan indicates his readiness to help us if we have some obstacles in bhakti. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in 2 of his 100 books, Krishna Samhita is one title, and Chaitanya Shikshamrita is the other title, and they have similar descriptions. Here's one. Aghasura is the personification of intolerance and cruelty. Due to lack of compassion for the living entities, there is a possibility that one's spiritual attachment will gradually diminish in the sadhana stage, because compassion cannot remain separate from spiritual attachment. I'll say it again. Compassion cannot remain separate from spiritual attachment. So supposing someone doesn't have spiritual attachment, they may feel some compassion, but it doesn't stick because they're attached to material. If you're attached to spiritual, it stays. It's enduring because of spiritual attachment. But if you don't have spiritual attachment, there's a problem. The basis of compassion for the living entities and one's devotion to Krishna is the same. So if we're all on the path, we're journeying to Krishna, and there's some practices that we're doing along the way. And steadiness, as opposed to unsteadiness, is dependent upon Krishna helping us overcome such tendencies of cruelty and intolerance of others. And when you get disturbed by others that do nasty things, and it happens sometimes, or say nasty things, or it's a detriment to bhakti. So Krishna is kind, and Krishna can help us by removing this. Here's Bhakti Siddhanta on the same pastime. Krishna is killing Aghasura. Aghasura epitomizes cruelty and violence. It is possible for love to suffer gradual decay by the absence of kindness for all animate beings. This must be so, inasmuch as kindness can never be different principle from love for Krishna. These are nice truths. Good and easy just to read it quickly, but let it sink in, and it's instructive. So Krishna can remove that intolerance, etc. There is no substantive difference between love for Krishna and kindness to individual souls. And a further writing of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sri Krishna's activities are of 2 distinct types. Listen carefully. Krishna has Nitya Lila, eternal pastimes, and he has another kind of pastimes. He calls it occasional. The occasional pastimes are when he appears in this world. Like, for example, in the spiritual world there's no birth pastime. In the material world there's a birth pastime, Krishna Janmashtami. So he's indicating that's occasional, or naimittika. There's no birth pastime in the spiritual world, but there is in this world. And the childhood activities that Krishna performs for 11 years, 10 months, 10 years, 11 months, is the time that he spent in Vrindavan. There's no childhood pastimes in Goloka, in the spiritual realm. So all of these are occasional pastimes, the appearance of Aghasura. In Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna's Nitya Lila, or eternal pastimes, are conducted through 8 periods of the day. They are constantly in motion. Ashta Kaliya Lila, 8 times, Kala, 8 periods of the day. And Krishna does certain different qualitative activities during different qualitative times of the day in the spiritual world. Those are eternal pastimes. But in Bhoma Vrindavan, Krishna's Nitya Lila is mixed with Naimatika Lila, or occasional pastimes. Some occasional pastimes include Krishna's leaving Vrindavan to live in Mathura and Dwarka, his returning to Braja, his killing of various demons, and so forth. Occasional pastimes, like as the painting shows, entering into the mouth of Aghasura. These pastimes, the occasional ones, are very useful for an aspiring devotee who is bound within the material world. The Naimatika Lila, this is still Bhaktivinoda Thakur describing, or occasional pastimes of leaving Vrindavan, actually exist in Goloka Vrindavan, but only in a conspicuously absent manner. They are truly manifest only in the material world. What does that mean? Here's what it means. Everything is within the source of everything. Very simple. And in the Goloka, some of what is within the source of everything is not manifest. The occasional pastimes are within, but they're not manifest. And then they are manifest when he appears. And then he disappears. His apparent presence is withdrawn. He enters into non-visible pastimes. In this world, the eternal pastimes of Krishna are going on eternally in Braja Vrindavan. And they're going on eternally in the spiritual world, but sometimes internally not manifest. I'll say it again. Everything that exists is within the source of everything. Some of those everythings are not manifest in the spiritual world, but they're within. And when Krishna appears in the material world, they're manifest. And then when he disappears, they're not manifest anymore. But Krishna is he who is the source of everything, has everything. And it's especially attractive. The childhood pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan are especially attractive for all of us. We're in the material world. He's displaying pastimes that he doesn't display in the spiritual world. Why? To stimulate our love for him. And that's why we're hearing these wonderful pastimes. Practicing devotees or sadhakas understand these occasional pastimes to be negatively tinted reflections of the eternal pastimes. Now this is an interesting language, negatively tinted reflections. Negatively tinted. So, you know from Bhagavad Gita, there's a tree with its branches going down and the roots going up. There's no such tree. The other way around. So that tree that we see in the material world is a reflection of the tree that's on the other side of the lake meaning or indicating the material world. The reflection is here in the reflected pastimes, negatively tinted reflections of that which exists in the spiritual world. When it's related to Krishna, it's like that. Supposing it's not related to Krishna, they're just trees. There's no Krishna with cowherd boys moving around. Then it's just a reflection, a distorted reflection. But when Krishna appears, then it's of the spiritual world, the tree that with the roots going down and the branches going up, the spiritual world tree, it appears upside down. But Krishna's there, negatively tinted reflections of eternal pastimes. Killing of the demon Aghasura symbolizes removing the sinful activities of violence towards living entities and torturing others due to hatred. Both go on. Too much. Violence towards living entities. I mean, When you're going home from here, past some shops, how many of them are burger places and chicken places? And you don't think about it because we see it so much where sensibilities have become dull, but it's the product of violence. And there's consequences. Consciousness becomes dulled. And just, it's part of life. People do it without thinking. Again and again and again for the whole life. There's consequences. And then kindness to the animals and kindness to other forms of fish and birds, etc., leads to unkindness towards others. Look around. Wars and violence, and it doesn't stop. And it escalates, and so it becomes a big conflagration, and who knows where it's going to go from there. And it's a demoniac civilization that we're living within. You shrug your shoulders, and what are you going to do? That's what's going on. But we should know what's going on. And because of what's going on, the loving propensity towards Krishna is covered. The flip side, when there's compassion for living entities, it opens the door for compassion or love for the Supreme. It's not easy to live one's life by that higher standard, but that's what's being explained here. Sincere devotees hope that by the influence of understanding the purpose of Krishna's performance of different occasional pastimes, their own various anarthas, like violence to other living beings, etc., or unwanted material contaminations will be destroyed. So go on hearing Krishna's pastimes, and it'll help in our mission of life. Now here's a description, we're almost done. Here's a description of Aghasura's past life. There was a king in Mithila. Bahulasha was the king's name, his ancestor of Janak. He inquired from Narada Muni, who was this demon in his previous birth that he was able to enter Krishna's abode? Simply by hating Krishna, this demon quickly attained Lord Krishna. So Narada answers, O king, he was Shankachuda's son. Who's Shankachuda? Shankachuda is, Shanka means conch, and Chuda means jewel. So he appears in Vrindavan. Shankachuda was a buddy of Kamsa, and his son was a follower of Kuvera, who tried to steal, Shankachuda tried to steal the gopis, etc., etc. His name was Agha. Agha was the son of Shankachuda. He was young, strong, and very handsome. He was like another Kamadev. Kamadev means Cupid. One time, he saw Ashtavakra Muni. Ashta means 8. Vakra means bent. So Ashtavakra Muni was walking along, and Agha saw him. He laughed at him. This is a painting meant to show a sage whose body is bent in 8 places, or Ashtavakra. Then the sage cursed the demon, Agha. Oh, wicked-hearted one, you'll become a snake. You'll become the ugliest snake in the circle of the earth. Seeing that the demon, his pride and arrogance now gone, fallen at his feet, the sage became pleased with him and gave him a benediction. Ashtavakra, the sage, said, Sri Krishna, who is more handsome than millions of Kamadevas will enter your stomach. Then you'll be freed from having a snake's form. Pretty interesting. And guess what? That's the end of part 3. So as many of you that can, please come for the part 4, that's the finale. And if you can't come, then see it live. If you can't see it live, then see the recording, because it's all being, this little camera here is recording things. So for those of you that came a little late, we spent some time discussing the life of Baladev Vidyabhusan, whose disappearance day is, by lunar calendar, is today. And we heard part 3 of Krishna's killing of Aghasura. Seeing the painting, Krishna's holding his hand up. He's wishing that the cowherd boys not enter Aghasura's mouth, because he's death personified. He hasn't wished that for them. And they're in playful mood, they go anyways. So then we're going to hear what happens next. And if Krishna wanted them to not enter, why didn't he say something? Or do something? But he didn't. And they entered. And there was, very dangerous. Death. Very dangerous. So we'll hear some more tomorrow. Let's see if there's some discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Go ahead, speak.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for the very wonderful class. So the question is about compassion. You kind of put the slide where compassion, as we are more and more spiritually connected to Krishna, compassion grows. So is that because as one spiritually progresses, they are able to see everyone else as part and parcel of Krishna?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is you're thinking of the Bhaktisiddhanta's comment, I think. This is the one? Yeah. As much as one can have affinity for the Supreme, one has natural affinity for the parts and parcels of the Supreme. One may try to have some compassion for the parts and parcels without affinity for the Supreme, but it's cosmetic. It doesn't stay. It's insubstantial. It's like a reflection of the real thing. And then there's the real thing. Yes.
Thank you. I also had 2 questions from yesterday's class and day before. So one question was, you mentioned yesterday that Jiva Goswami had 5 commentaries on Bhagavatam. And one of the verses you showed yesterday, in that it seemed like in Gopal Champu commentary that Jiva Goswami was addressing the Brahmavadis. Is that like all the 5 different commentaries were specifically like, they were philosophical nuances addressing?
No,
okay.
No. Different, because each has had some personal feature to it, or particular feature to it. So that's not all, each commentary had the same thing.
On the first day you had mentioned Aghasura pastime took place on Lord Balram's birthday. So
other acharyas spoke differently, or wrote differently.
Yeah. But I don't know if I heard correctly, but you said some other pastime took place the next year on Balram's birthday?
Yes.
Was that Brahma Vimochana Leela?
Yeah. No. You're getting ahead. Okay. But I don't mind saying succinctly after Aghasura is killed, something happened. They had lunch. And while they're having lunch, something happened. Brahma was perplexed. Wow. What's the extent of Krishna's powers? Is there a limit? And then he did what he did. He stole the calves and cowherd boys. Now, in Brahma's time, it was a moment. In earthly time, it was 1 year. And 1 year later was 1 year later. Balaram was also not present 1 year later. That's earthly time. And that's, something is important to understand. Heavenly time is different than earthly time. And Brahma's time is different than heavenly and earthly time. So it's relative time. But the answer to your question is yes. Balaram was not present 1 year later.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So Aghasura epitomizes cruelty and violence, and you gave an example of all the slaughterhouses that we have, the shops that we have, where everybody kind of goes and very naturally buys their stuff. It's so natural to understand that people love their own kids, but they kill other living entities' kids and eat, right? When it's so natural, why people do that?
So what was the last part?
If it is so natural to understand that's not right,
Yes.
why people do that?
Since they understand it's not right, why do they do it? That's your question. Well, different reasons. They don't see it. Out of sight, out of mind. Second reason, the tongue. When the tongue is uncontrolled, the mind can't be controlled. And when the mind is not controlled, they can't see what's right in front of their nose, what to speak of what's often a slaughterhouse, or often of wherever the animals are dealt with, and the birds are dealt with, and the fish are dealt with, and one becomes dull. And when one becomes dull, then something that is hurtful to others, they don't think about it. And therefore they can do other hurtful things to each other and not even think about it. Next, over here.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. My question is regarding Brahma Sukham. We learned that in Brahman effulgence there is eternity and knowledge, but there is no bliss.
There's some, but it's not the fullness of. There's a happiness. Prabhupada's example. Supposing you're banging your head against the wall and it hurts. You stop. Bliss. That's not what bliss is. Negation of pain is not bliss. But there's some indication of health when the disease condition subsides. So when the diseased condition of material affinity subsides, there's a glimpse of Brahmasukh. The happiness of Brahman. It's a glimpse of Ananda, but it's not the fullness, it's just a glimpse, a glimmer. Like, the rising, when and it's in the morning, before the sun actually comes on the horizon. You can see the globe of the sun. There's light in the firmament before you can see the sun. So there's some light. like that. Preliminary, partial, not full. An indication of. Okay?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful class and so many details. I have this question about Naimittika.
About which?
Naimittika
Naimittika.
activities.
Do you back in the back there, you understand this terminology? She's asking a question from what we saw on the screen about occasional pastimes or naimittika, as opposed to nitya lila, naimittika, occasional pastimes. Go ahead.
So what pastimes that happened on this earthly realm are also happened in Goloka Vrindavan?
No.
Nothing.
No. Like, there's no birth pastime in Goloka.
Yeah, but Krishna, when he gets older, like
But
after...
in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna doesn't get older.
I mean, so none of the pastimes that happen on earth happen in Goloka Vrindavan, Maharaj?
You're asking the same question again. The answer is no.
No, okay.
Within Krishna is everything, but Krishna doesn't manifest everything that's within him. He manifests everything that's within him in the earthly pastime because the Naimittika pastimes or occasion, they're his pastimes, but they've got an adjective. Naimittika pastimes. In Goloka, they're not manifest, but they're within him.
So all this five rasas, Vatsalya and everything, they're naturally there, eternally.
That's there, eternal. But how it's manifest is not the same. The cowherd boy's playing doesn't go on in the Goloka Vrindavan because there's no birth, there's no childhood. He's eternally 16, ever fresh youth, Navayovana.
So that made me think of what pastimes happen in actual Goloka Vrindavan.
You're asking the same question again, aren't you?
No, Maharaj, like in the eternal Goloka Vrindavan.
So hold the microphone a little further away because the speaker, I'm having a hard time hearing.
So I hear about the pastimes that happened on earthly realm, right? All Krishna
Yes,
born.
occasional.
Only occasional. So, but I'm now curious about what happened in actual Goloka Vrindavan. What pastimes?
There's from 16.
From 16. Okay. Yeah, that was my question.
He's married. He has queens. But his age isn't 16. His age is eternal. But his form looks like.
That clarified my doubt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Namaskar. My question, I have two questions. One
Two
about
questions.
Aghasura. So here it says it epitomizes cruelty and violence. I think something to do within our mind, with
Yeah.
more subtle level.
Yes,
And then
yes.
you also explain about a story which seems more kind of physical in nature, right?
It seems more what?
Physical, like which is
Physical?
which more than what is subtle, right? That which actually happened, right? Which you can see and
It actually
perceive.
happened, but I'm not sure what your point is.
My point is, how do you make the connection between the story where he was given a curse versus what this person here says about epitomizing cruelty and violence? So what is the connection that, in one instance, it is said that, he's a person, he was given a curse, but on the other instance, you say it's also related to something within our mind that we need to kill, essentially.
So you want to know the connection between the curse and his mind as
Yes, how is
Aghasura.
they connected? Because he did not do any, like a violent activity, like he basically laughed on a person.
So I'm like, how is
he
that?
insulted. I mean, it's
I mean, if it was a killing activity or something which was
there's
more
consequences.
correct, but if it was a killing activity and then I could somehow correlate it to
Supposing Ashtavakra didn't curse him, there's
Yeah.
consequences. Even with the curse, it was explicit. But supposing he didn't curse, there's consequences.
but if you would have done something like something more physical in nature,
Yeah.
like hitting someone or
Okay, he didn't hit him. he spoke offensively. He laughed at him, and called him names.
okay,
And, people do that,
yes,
and there's consequences. And they may be speaking like that or laughing at somebody who's malformed or something,
yes,
and there's consequences. There's consequences, and especially what to speak of an exalted personality has some bodily defects. So there's consequences. And then it carried over into his next life. That's the lesson. So, it's not okay to vilify. He didn't hit, didn't hurt, didn't physically maim, didn't throw sticks and stones, he didn't shoot him, he didn't, physically harm him. He just was abusive. And
But
there's
yeah.
consequences.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more from the side of, I mean, if laughing, right, naturally we do it. I mean, it comes out, right, like in a situation, and I'm taking it to a next level.
It wasn't just fun. He was vilifying.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the consequences. I mean, the
So
karma is,
don't get lost. Just stick to what you do understand. And the lesson is, don't offend an elevated person. They may be bodily defective.
yeah,
And there are persons I know that are bodily defective,
correct.
and they're elevated persons. I mean, without naming names, but there's such persons.
Okay.
So be careful. That's the
Absolutely.
lesson.
No, absolutely. And another question was with regards to, one question Prabhu had asked about, killing of animals and those kind of things. So in Krishna's, in his world, how does he distinguish between a plant life and an animal life? Like why does he place one
There's
higher
gradations.
over the other?
There's gradations.
Wait, what did he
There are gradations.
Gradations.
There's a more serious consequence if you take the life of a human
Yes.
than a mosquito. But you don't take the life of a mosquito whimsically. Some people just, they don't care. They don't think about it. Like that was his question. How can they do such abominable things? But, one who has compassion and affective part of their consciousness, they can't do that. I mean, just today, there's the sannyas ashram has right behind it an auto mechanic shop on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And the guys over there were cutting down a tree. And then, they were hauling away the limbs of the tree, like just cavalier. Because what's a tree anyway? It's just a tree. It's a nuisance. Get it out of here. You can't do like that. There's consequences. No,
It becomes difficult to live. Like I got 6 trees on my yard.
Okay, so-
at some point I got to cut the limbs.
Okay,
because-
okay.
For the reasons, and I think, to understand
So,
that.
but you're a conscious person. You're not a car repair guy.
Of course not.
So if you prune your trees, you're doing it thoughtfully,
Yes.
and for a purpose of it expands the growth, and if this you know a little about horticulture, and
Correct.
this is what you do, and it's not and the other is what you don't do. But these
So
guys,
doing it with consciousness is more the approach.
yes,
Rather than doing
yes,
it
yes,
without.
yes, yes, yes. Supposing somebody's going to build a house, they may have to move a tree.
Absolutely, have to do it.
They have to. Some trees may have to sacrifice their life.
Yeah.
But then what's the consciousness that you're in when you're taking the life of a tree? And we're just speaking of trees. There's all kinds of other things that go on. So what's the consciousness behind walking across the lawn? Prabhupada said, this is a teaching in Los Angeles. You don't even walk across the lawn unless you're doing this for Krishna. Because, the grass and living entities that are within the grass, and they're getting squished.
Absolutely.
The hunter, Megari the hunter, and he became the disciple of Narada Muni. And when he saw Narada Muni and Parvat Muni, he came running, but got down on his knees and swept the ants that were on the road, or the path, not the road.
Yes.
So he didn't want to step on the ants. It's consciousness.
Consciousness.
He moved them out of the way. That's that's extreme.
My message from this is if you get more aware and alert of your actions.
Yes, and so the consciousness behind is similar to this question of living entities and the Supreme.
Right.
And if you have love for the Supreme, you have some affection for the other living entities. And if you don't have love for the Supreme, your affection for other living entities, poof, now you see it, now you don't.
Correct.
Circumstance can easily take it away. But if it's something that sticks, that's substantial, that's sat. So we don't just become obsessive about, like say Jains, you wear a mask because you don't want to breathe in living. So where do you draw the line? We look to our acharyas where you draw the line. That in service to Krishna, that's where we draw the line. And so what's in service to Krishna? The consciousness behind it determines. We breathe without masks. Because the living entities that may be sacrificing their life, they're hearing spiritual sound vibrations. Haribol. Beneficial. Etc. So Krishna consciousness is the solution. Absence of Krishna consciousness leads to implications. That's the lesson.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone in the back there? Going once, going twice. Okay. Over here? Anyone? Yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This is related to the Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan part of today.
Okay.
It also reminded me about Srila Jiva Goswami, who had composed almost 400,000 verses, a
Yes.
very large body of work.
Yes.
All the acharyas have done that. And I was thinking that they would have done it with the expectation that everything that they are writing is going to be preserved and assimilated and passed on. But it seems almost an impossible task.
Yeah.
So, if not individually, then collectively as a society, what's the hope of not losing some of, even one of these 400,000 and some other 100,000s? What can we do to preserve it? Or will it just go away as Kali Yuga, as time progresses?
Well, there's things that people can do, but perfectly preserve everything, that's a tall task. But one of the ways is digital. But in modern, I've got a library here. I've got a library in Chicago, and it takes up 3 walls. And I've got a computer that has more than what's on those 3 walls. And I keep finding new things that are here that I didn't even know they were there. I mentioned this. If we get as far as chapter 14, because this is chapter 12, we're about to finish chapter 12, and then comes 13, and then comes 14. In chapter 14, the list of commentaries comes to about 220 pages. That's a lot. So it's preserved. And those books, where are they? I can't carry them. But so your question is how to preserve. And the digital is it's one of the ways that Prabhupada's writings, his letters, and his conversations and classes, they're all recorded digitally. They weren't recorded digitally, then they're preserved digitally in North Carolina, Bhaktivedanta Archives. So you do what you can do. And, for example, Madhvacharya was known, one of the things he was known for was he gathered books. And he was able to distinguish what's authentic and what's not. What's a manuscript that's to be accepted and worthy of being quoted, and ones that are not. And he kept those manuscripts, original handwritten manuscripts, in a library that burned. They're not available anymore. He makes reference to them, so we know they existed because he wouldn't refer to them, and he's an authority that we respect. So they existed, and he quotes them. They're not available anymore. And then, sometimes university libraries preserve manuscripts. Hanuman Preshik Swami is my next door neighbor in the ashram. So he was sharing something with me yesterday. He read something in one of Prabhupada's, the Bhaktivedanta purports, about Parashara Muni's description of this age of Kali, not for the age in which he lived, but in the age of Kali, what are standards of proper conduct for human society. And there was a title. So he went to the UC Berkeley library, and the librarian looked up in his microfiche and said it's there. The description, and so there are 4 librarians that found it in the sub-basement, second or third floor down sub-basement. They found the manuscript in English, and he got a copy of it. I don't know how he got a copy of it, digital copy of some kind. So it exists, but people aren't interested in these things. But some universities are interested in these things. And he said that the librarians were really excited. Oh, somebody's interested in these things. And they searched and they found it. And he was interested. So he read it. I don't know. He didn't ask me if you want a digital copy. I assume he has a digital copy. Anyway, so your question is how to preserve so many things. So digital is the best because it makes it easy to access. And even digital, it's not easy to access because you have to go to the right place. And who knows where the right place is? Srila Prabhupada ki, Krishna Balaram ki, Krishna and Vrindavan Dham ki, Gaur Premanandi.